we do not understand white supremacy, we will be confused about who being used to do what against whom.
Soldier was not born to make white people feel comfortable. I am African first. I am black first. I want what's good for me and my people.
Black people, non-white people, begin to look at it like a chessboard and understand that if people who classify themselves as white are playing for white genetic survival, then they cannot do the things that black people expect them to do, like help across the board. And that black people are going to have to get accustomed to playing the black
Good morning. Good morning. Station head is already queued up. Give me a second. Yeah, I already got station head queued up. Hopefully, you feel me. I don't have problems with the connection. I just added I just did some other stuff. So, we'll see. How y'all doing? Good morning. This is episode 3, but the first episode of 2022 of the many ways white supremacy has got us fucked up. Got me fucked up. Got you fucked up too. Okay? School is in session. Welcome. Come in, come all, come on, come all. Today we will be talking about how the war on drugs became an attack on Black education. I'm not gonna be on here all like that because I got a presentation. This is a Saturday school. You understand what I'm saying to you? Saturday school. So y'all, we need to get it together. Okay. Got some tea here. So I am about to share my screen with y'all. So let's get it. Let's get it popping. All right, so here we are. The many ways white supremacy has got me fucked up. Okay, how the war on drugs, the true attack on Black education. This is a R for S production. Okay. Also, with this particular presentation, with this particular class. I will not be here for a long time. I'm here for a good time, not a long time, okay? All right. So yeah, I just wanted to be clear on that. We won't be here for long. Let me go ahead and put my phone on Do Not Disturb. We got time for that. All right. So let's begin. So we're going to start with the era of President Nixon. So you got from the era of President Nixon was from 1969 to 1974. Okay. That's when Nixon was in office. So let's see here. The first slide we have President Nixon in 1969, right? President Richard Nixon labeled drug use as public enemy number 1. Okay? Public enemy number 1. although he declared this public enemy number one, drug use as public enemy number one, it really, but was it, we got to understand that it really wasn't, drugs. And as you see on the next, little animation here, flu rates in 1969, flu rates were much, much more higher. People were dying from the flu more than they were overdosing from drugs. You understand? So you had about almost 4,000 people dying from the flu, each year. And you had about 2,000 people dying from drug overdoses. So that's the first question that we got to unpack, right? Our first question that we have to unpack is, how was drug use public enemy number one when you ain't even have, you ain't have a whole bunch of folks, in the grand scheme of things, in the grand population of things, you did not have a whole bunch of people overdosing from drugs. Okay? This is in the 1969. So, Richard Nixon was quoted in a speech called Practical Matter. He was quoted saying, and give me a second because it's fuzzy on my end, right? He was quoted saying, he was quoted saying, you have to face the fact that the whole problem is really the blacks. Okay? The key is to devise a system that recognizes this while not appealing to. So let me say that again. He gave a speech called Practical Matter in 1969, and he was quoted saying, you have to face the fact that the whole problem is really the blacks. The key is to devise a system that recognizes this while not appealing to. And then you got when he labeled drug use as public enemy number one. All right. So by 1970, Comprehensive Drug Abuse Prevention and Control Act of 1970. It was pretty much an effort to combat illicit drug use. Okay. So this is the beginning of which you have the war on drugs. Okay. This actually didn't really start in the 80s. It had been started in the 1970s. Okay. This Comprehensive Drug Abuse Prevention and Control Act of 1970 was updated by Reagan's era in the 1980s. And it was also updated by the Clinton era in the 1990s. All right. So we'll get to that a little bit later. But I just wanted to let y'all know this is where it stems from. So it wasn't about yeah, we combating drug use, because like I said before, there was more people dying from the damn flu in 1969 than it was people dying from drugs. Okay. So let's go on to our next slide. So from 1979 to 1990, you have the Nicaraguan Revolution. Okay. The Nicaraguan Revolution was between the Contras and the Sandinistas. All right. Sandinistas. The Sandinistas were communists. They practiced communists. They wanted communism to be in Nicaragua. The Contras were against that. They were against communism. They did not agree with having communism in Nicaragua. All right. So like good old American fashion, we had to go ahead and, put ourselves into their business, because as you know, Americans, what we practice, capitalism. We are totally against communism, right? So here we are. And there it is. So to protect the interest, right? To protect capitalistic interest, we had to intervene. Okay? So this is from 1979, as you can see. By 1980, you see Reagan, he gets elected to be president. President Ronald Reagan. This is the beginning of the Reagan era. Okay? To protect capitalistic interests in Nicaragua, we had to come up with some type of help, some type of aid for the Contras to fight against the Sandinistas in Nicaragua. Okay? So let's go to the next slide. By 1980, between the years of 1981 to 1983, the United States funded $19 million to the Contras to help them fight against the Sandinistas. All right? So remember, the Sandinistas are for communism. The Contras are not for communism. The Contras are for capitalism. So the Contras have the United States capitalistic interests, at heart. All right? $19 million between the 1981 and 1983 were given to, under the Reagan administration, it was given to the Contras. All right? Now, this is where everything gets a little interesting, right? You got still in the 1980s, we still got Republicans and Democrats, right? So the Democrats noticed that all this money is going to aid in Nicaragua, to aid the Contras. By 1982 to 1984, you have a series of amendments called the Bolin Amendment that prohibited this type of ordeal, going on, right? So the Democrats passed the Bolin Amendment. And like I said, the Bolin Amendment prohibited the federal government from military support for the purpose of overthrowing the government of Nicaragua. So the Sandinistas, they had already, had took over Nicaragua and making it into a communist country. Okay. The Contras are fighting against that. So the Contras was really trying to overthrow the government, and we were aiding in that. So by 1984, you have Democrats saying, no, we need to mind our business, right? We need to mind our business. We don't need to be aiding the Contras in this shenanigans. We do not want to aid a country to overthrow their government. Leave it alone. That became tricky, okay? Because we still wanted Nicaragua to be capitalistic. That serves us. That serves America. And this is, why one of the reasons why we always get into meddling into other people's business, other countries' business, to protect our capitalist interests. It's not about no damn democracy. It's not about no, we going to protect such a, nah. It's about the money. It's about the money, okay? So by 1985, this is where you have the Iran-Contra affair. So I'm going to just give you a little bit of background on that. You had Iran and Iraq. They were going, they were at war with one another. Okay. We had already had troops over there. I want to say in Iran. Okay. We already had troops over there. And some of our troops got held hostage during this situation. All right. So the Iran-Contra affair was pretty much a deal which was done in secret to say, hey, if we give missiles to Iran in exchange for releasing these hostages, it was 7 hostages that was over there held hostage, and I want to say by terrorists in Lebanon. Okay, so they're like, hey, if you go ahead and give us some military equipment, some missiles, some arms and stuff, we'll go ahead and get these people, save these people from being hostage held in Lebanon. Okay, so we're like, all right, we can do that because we want our American people to come back, right? But it also, in addition to that, it also um the funding from these missiles that we were giving them was aiding into the Contra and Sandinistas conflict over in Nicaragua. All right. So we gave these people the missiles. They would pay us money, and then they will also send us our troops, the 7 troops that was over there held in hostage in Lebanon. Okay. The money that was given to us from Iran was about, over the series, I want to say between 1985 to about 86, 87. That money, it was $30 million. That money was sent over to the Contras in Nicaragua. That's why it was such a big deal, because we already instituted the Boland Agreement. I mean, the Boland Amendment. The Boland Amendment had already told y'all. The Boland Amendment had already set the tone to say, hey, we are no longer going to be aiding in this Sandinistas versus Contras conflict. Okay? No aid is going to be given. That's not our place to be doing these things. But to get around that, the Reagan administration decided to, go backdoor and say, all right, cool, we'll give you some missiles in exchange for some money and our hostages. The money that we received from Iran went to aid the Contras. Okay, so you got about $50 million already going to the Contras. That still was not enough. Okay, that money was still not enough. So we had to come up with a plan. Not we, but the American government had to come up with a plan to get more money. Okay, how did they do that? Over in Nicaragua, in this time, the Contras were already dealing drugs in Nicaragua. Okay, they were already dealing drugs to get money to support their military and to overthrow the Sandinista government. They were already doing that in Nicaragua. They were already selling drugs in their own community over there. Okay, so this is where it also gets a little bit more interesting, right? The U.S. decided to say, hey, we can no longer, because they got caught with the Iran-Contra affair. The Reagan administration got caught doing this shit. So, once again, the Democrats put a stop to it and said, hey, you can't do this. So we were like, okay, no, the American government was like, all right, the Boland Amendment is already in place. We can no longer aid you. We need to come up with a plan to get you more money to protect our capitalist interest over in Nicaragua. Okay? This is where you see an increase of drug use. It's not by this shit just didn't fall out of thin air. No, this shit was a devised plan. Okay? So, like I said before, the Contras was already over there dealing drugs. So we decided, the American government decided to say, hey, well, we could also, to assist you with overthrowing the Sandinistas and assist of overthrowing communism, we might as well get into this drug trade too. Okay? So the FDA, the CIA, were put in place to take these drugs that the Contras are already dealing over in Nicaragua and to go ahead and expand that drug trade over here to the United States. All right? That's what happened. That's where we get these quote unquote war on drugs. It was a devised plan to protect capitalist interest for the United States government. All right? So yeah, that's just a little bit of background on how the hell we got to this crack cocaine epidemic from the 1980s throughout the 1990s. Okay, that's how we got there. It was a devised plan by the U.S. government to aid the Contras to overthrow communism, to protect America's capitalist interests. Okay, I want y'all to understand that. And then, of course, going back to the Nixon era, they already wanted to devise a plan to, quote unquote, deal with the blacks. Okay? The problem is the blacks. So we need to devise a plan to recognize that the blacks are a problem with that, while not appealing to. So here we go. Here we go with the bullshit and these war on drugs. Okay? So by 1986, you have the Anti-Drug Abuse Act. Okay? Remember, 1970, you already had the Comprehensive Drug Abuse Prevention and Control Act. By 1986, that act was amended to include the Anti-Drug Abuse Act, which pretty much declared that schools will be drug-free communities. Okay? Drug-Free Schools and Communities Act. During this climate, we also have to realize that it was a social the social aspect, right? The social aspect of the climate here in America during the 80s. I think the best way that for Black people, I think the best way as it's portrayed is if you go watch the movie NWA. That's the best way that I could that there is the best way that I have seen so far that has depicted what life was like during the crack cocaine epidemic. Okay? You can also watch a whole bunch of documentaries. You can also watch Narcos. That's also good representation too. Drugs flooding in communities left and right. And what communities they was coming into? Black communities. This shit was not just, oh, we woke up one day and we was in this shit. No, this was a constructed plan by the U.S. government, starting back in the Nixon era. Okay? It just so happened the opportunity arose in the Reagan era because the Democrats wasn't with that shit. The Democrats was like, yeah, when they instituted the Bolin Amendment to prevent us from meddling in other people's business, Reagan devised a plan to go around that, got caught, and now it's okay, well, I'm going to devise another plan where we're going to just aid the Contras and this drug trade. And you already got Nixon. It was already, you know what I'm saying? It was already, Nixon was the catalyst for this shit. So you already have Nixon who was like, yes, the problem is the blacks. Cool. It's a no-brainer for Reagan to infiltrate crack cocaine into Black communities. Look at where the crack cocaine epidemic hit hard. Places that have access to port access, Places like Miami, places like Boston, New York, LA, big cities with access to ports, port cities, Baltimore. It wasn't, it, like I said, it's not it just wasn't one day we woke up into this shit, yo. No, that's not what happened. It was a devised plan. And I really want y'all to understand, my Black people, I really want y'all to understand that. Okay? I really want y'all to understand the insidious shit that the American government does. And then they paint themselves as, oh, we're doing this for freedom. We're doing this for democracy. No, 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 no. You're doing it to protect your interest, your capitalist interest. Okay? So by 1986, college enrollment for Black men dropped 10%. Mind you, Black people as a whole we had already increased our enrollment into college in the 1970s, from the late 1960s, 70s, and early 80s. By 1986, shit dropped. For Black men specifically, dropped 10%. Okay? Let me make sure we on the same page. We on the same page. Okay, cool. And then you also had, between 1980 to 1989, the arrest of Black men for drug sales and manufacturing rose by 219%. Let me say that again. The arrest of Black men for drug sales and manufacturing or use. So if Black men use drugs, sold drugs, or manufacture the drugs, you know, look at the figure of the wrist and you know, making cocaine into crack. The arrest rate rose for Black men by 219%. Even though, let's not forget, there is no disparity when it comes to Black people doing drugs and white people doing drugs. We do the shit at the same rate. Okay? It's not like Black people do more drugs than white. No. White people and Black people do this shit at the same rate. Okay? Nixon wanted to fix the Blacks and fix the problem of the Blacks, and this is how Reagan did the shit. Okay? So now you have education, the education piece. So like I said, you had the Drug-Free Schools and Communities Act. The Drug-Free Schools and Communities Act, I think that was what, 1986? It incarcerated persons. So remember, there was 200, the arrest rate for Black men during the 1980s rose to 219%. By the time 1986 came, you had the Drug-Free Schools and Communities Act, which pretty much stated that incarcerated persons are ineligible for both federal Pell Grants and student loans while in prison. Okay? And these weren't just, you know, oh, we're going to give you about 2 years and then you go to rehab. No. These were, oh, you selling crack cocaine, you selling weed, oh, baby, 30 years. Football numbers, you understand me? Oh, you got 30 years. You got 40 years, 20 years. Very draconian. And when draconian just means harsh. Very harsh penalties for the most little. You can have just a little bit on you. It didn't even have to be a lot. Don't let it be a lot. Because now you see about 50, you not life. You understand? You had a little nugget of weed on you, had maybe a little rock, of cocaine, maybe a little bump. I mean, a little rock crack, maybe a little bump of cocaine. You was going to prison for football number time. 20 years, 30 years, 40 years to life in prison. Okay? Drug convictions can limit a young adult's ability to receive student aid from the government even after release. All right? So even if they, did their sentence, let's just say they so happen to get 15 years. Let's just say a 15-year-old young black boy got caught up, wrong place, wrong time, got 15 years. By the time he's 30, he still can't receive student aid if he wanted to go back to college and pursue his education, even get his damn GED. He wouldn't be able to do it. Okay? Involvement with the criminal justice system may have a dampening effect on the educational aspirations of youth. Like I said, I just used an example of a 15-year-old going to prison, 18-year-old going to prison. They're not even, their psyche, their mind is not even developed. And they're being put into prison with grown ass men. I can't even imagine the shit they were seeing. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, they get out. They ain't worrying about no damn school. Most of the time, they probably done learned how to become an even better criminal in that shit, in the prison system. These prisons do not, we all know that these prisons will not rehabilitate people. You go in a criminal, you come out even a better criminal. We know this. So now we're moving into the 90s. This is Clinton. Okay. Safe and Drug-Free Schools and Communities Act of 1994. Scrutinized student behavior, incentivized over disciplining students and over reporting behavior infractions to demonstrate a need for additional funds. Okay? Public schools get paid. What is this? Oh. I'm seeing the comments. Anyway, public schools get paid based off of how many students they have coming into the school. They get paid based off attendance. So some of the schools that I have worked in, specifically in the Midwest in Michigan, have they have something that's called Count Day. Okay, Count Day. We encourage our students to be present on Count Day because Count Day is where we have all the students in the school and we get to actually see our numbers for that particular school, so we can then report how many students we actually have in that school on a daily basis to the state government. That state government also reports it to the federal government to receive funding. Okay? So the reason why we have, count days and stuff like that is because we need the funding. Schools need the funding. So in this case, you had a lot of school systems, public school systems at that were, also had these very, very harsh, very, very harsh ways of disciplining students, right? Students were getting written up for the most basic thing, insubordination. What the hell is insubordination? A student can have a disagreement with a teacher Insubordination. Get written up, get suspended. Get written up, get in school suspension. That's reported, written down by the school, by the principal. The shit is going to the state government. They send it to the federal government to receive funding. For the littlest things. This is where you also see the school to prison pipeline come into play. Okay? You had zero tolerance policies, mandated harsh punishments for students' behavior. The behavioral infractions without consideration for the circumstances surrounding them. Let's just say the student got a very, this is where we, nowadays in public schools, we try to take care of the child holistically, considering all that's going on with their home life, et cetera, et cetera. Back in this time, you had zero tolerance policies. It ain't matter if your mama was on crack. It ain't matter if your daddy was beating your mama upside the head. You wanted to act out in school? Cool. We got you. We got you. You in trouble. It didn't matter. All right. Let's see. My next point. And this act, the Safe and Drug-Free Schools and Communities Act of 1994, also mandated schools to report specific student behavior to the criminal justice or juvenile delinquency system. Then I just say the school to prison pipeline, this is where it started. This is how the war on drugs became an attack on Black education. And the reasons why I say that is because this was not happening in suburban schools. This was happening in urban communities, urban schools. I already said urban is code word for Black. I want you, I don't know where y'all live, but I really, really want you guys to go to your nearest urban city. A city like Cleveland, Ohio. A city like Detroit, Michigan. Los Angeles. Atlanta. Houston, Texas. Go to your nearest urban area and you tell me, even to this day, you tell me how many Black folk in comparison to white folk. I mean, nowadays you probably got a little bit more sprinkle of white folk due to gentrification, but I'm pretty sure that town, or not that town, but the city is still overwhelmingly Black. There's a reason for this. This shit was not going on in no suburban school. This was going on in urban schools. So, whatever the student, and most of the time it was geared toward Black boys. Black boys will act out in school. Their behavior will be reported and it'll be submitted to the criminal justice or juvenile delinquency system. So not only are they getting in trouble at school, they got a damn almost got a, you know what I'm saying? They got a also fear that if they get in trouble in school that they might get arrested and get sent to the damn detention home. Depending on what it was. Maybe a fight broke out, a brawl. Everybody getting arrested and going to the detention home. This is where you also have school resource officers in the school. You got metal detectors in the school. Yeah, it's for safety reasons, but it's also to get hemmed up. I have witnessed. I used to actually volunteer at a high school in Atlanta, and I witnessed this shit. Young boys, young men, they'll fight each other. High schoolers, they will fight each other, get caught up, and it's just kiddie shit. Oh, such and such talking about my mama, such and such talking about my shoes I got on, and it's just just kids being kids, kids being kids. And fighting each other, they call, the Atlanta public schools police. And they got these young men, 14, 15 years old, 16, 17 years old, in cuffs, escorting them out of the building. Where are they going? Oh, they're going to the damn police department, and it's getting on their record. This is where you have this shit come from. The Safe and Drug-Free Schools and Communities Act of 1994. What do you think that does to a young man's psyche who's already going through a lot at home most of the time? What do you think? What do you think? Do you think they're going to gain the confidence to do better, to be better? No. They're going to get into that cycle of doing wrong. And sometimes they already have been introduced to the lifestyle of fast money because they're already in poverty. They probably already know what it's like to go without. So they're looking up to older students or older high school dropouts that's making this little fast money, fast cash, and they get caught up. So let's do a little recap. Nixon, let me go back. Nixon, I'm trying to get my slides together, guys. Let me go back. 1969, in a speech, Nixon stated, in his speech, A Practical Matter, Nixon stated, this is in 1969 now, you have to face the fact that the whole problem is really the blacks. The key is to devise a system that recognizes this while not appearing to. Okay? Cool. By 1980s, you have the Nicaraguan Revolution. This is prime opportunity for America to go ahead and start this increase of drugs infiltrating America, okay? Prime opportunity. Nicaraguan Revolution was between the Sandinistas and the Contras. Sandinistas were communist. Contras were against communism. There was a series of amendments, the Bolin Amendment, that prohibited the American government to aid the Contras because we were already aiding them in the early 80s. We already gave them $19 million. Okay? The Democrats passed the Bolin Amendment to say, hey, nah, we're not doing that. We need to mind our business. And also, I don't have a dog in the the Democrat versus a Republican fight. I look, I got my own opinion on that. So I'm not over here saying that the Democrats is good. No, that's not what I'm saying. It's not what I just want you guys to understand where we were politically in the 1980s and where everybody stood. Once again, the Reagan administration backdoored the Bolin Amendment by creating the Iran-Contra affair, where we sent $30 million to the Contras. The reason why we got that $30 million is because we were giving missiles to Iran in exchange for money and in exchange for the freedom of American hostages. Okay? Like I said earlier, the Contras was already dealing drugs in Nicaragua. They were dealing drugs because they needed money to support the military to overthrow the Sandinistas. So it was a no-brainer for Reagan to say, hey, we got caught with this Iran-Contra affair. We can't send you no more money. But what we can do is help you out with this drug shit, this drug trade. Go ahead and send, send some cocaine over here. Send some cocaine over here. And we'll be able to go ahead and make money off of that drug trade to send back to you to support the overthrow of the Sandinistas, communism. And of course, to look like we were doing good for the community, right? You had anti-drug laws and acts passed. You had, quote unquote, the war on drugs. Legislation. Just say no. But in reality, the Reagan administration was the people that set it up. They set it up. And once again, these drugs were not infiltrated to the damn suburbs. They were infiltrated in port cities, cities that have access to international trade. LA, Baltimore, Boston, New York, Miami. And now you have the destruction, furthermore destruction in the school system. With folks who incarcerated people who maybe done been to jail, been to prison, did their time. Now they want to come out and better themselves, and they can't do it. They can't further their education because they are ineligible for the grants and student loans to pay for the shit. And we already know who faced the brunt of that. The arrest for Black men from 1980 to 1989 increased, y'all, by 219%. Not 100, 219%. And here we are. The school to prison pipeline started in the 90s and it continues because I just gave you examples of how we still have school resource officers in high schools and middle schools, regular police officers in these schools, keeping track of who's doing what. And it's not just for student safety. You understand? It's not just for student safety. Because I get it, we do have fights and stuff in schools that could, get out of hand, but it's not every day. It's not every day. Most of the time, these officers are disciplining students who, like I said, insubordination. Maybe they talk back. Maybe they have an actual disagreement with the teacher. And now they're getting written up and getting transported to a you know what I'm saying, the youth detention home or the damn police station and getting it on their record. So this has been a serious talk on how the United States government devised a plan that prohibited people, not just a plan when it comes to the infiltration of drugs in Black communities, but a plan to put a damper on Black education, put a damper on people, Black people specifically, being able to access higher education. We know that if you're college educated, you're going to make more money. Your salary is going to be more than if you just have a high school diploma. We know this. Look at the statistics. I want to give a special shout out to one of my professors that really helped me with this presentation, Dr. Richard Benson at Spelman College. I'll be having way more discussions. Well, not way more, but I'm also going to be having a little bit more discussions on how the public school system was actually resegregated, I guess, because you already know we had the whole American idea of desegregations in public schools, but I really want to paint the picture that by the time the war on drugs was occurring, most of these schools in the urban area were Black. We'll get to that later. That'll be another topic, another presentation. But yeah, this is, like I said, this was not a this was not just oh yeah, we're just, you just have this problem out of the blue. No, this was a plan, a devised plan, a plan that was devised to protect American capitalist interest in Nicaragua. That's what the war on drugs was really about. And it was painted to be this, oh, we're helping the community. We're going to be tough on drug crime. Yeah, you going to be tough on drug crime, all right? You tough on drug crime, all right? So, yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the presentation. Go ahead and leave your comments, your thoughts. I want to get to know shit. If I left anything out, check me on that too. I hope you guys enjoyed. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and I think that's it. Thank you all. I appreciate you. Until next time, stop what you're doing and learn something, or history will repeat itself. Okay, this is T, your hostess with this hypnosis, and I just gave you the latest dose of white shenanigans. Okay, be blessed.